The transport shuttle shook as it docked with Nexus Prime Station. Hannah Kim pressed her face against the small window and stared at the massive structure floating in space. The station was huge, bigger than any city she had ever seen on Earth. Lights twinkled from thousands of windows, and ships from dozens of different worlds moved around it like tiny insects. "We made it," she whispered to the large figure sitting beside her. The creature next to her was enormous. It stood almost 3 meters tall, even while sitting down. Its body was covered in thick gray scales that looked like armor. Powerful muscles moved under its skin as it breathed. Its face was different from a human face, with a longer jaw and larger teeth. But its eyes were the most striking feature. They glowed with a soft amber light and seemed to hold a deep sadness. The creature looked at Hannah and made a low rumbling sound. She reached out and touched its massive hand.
I
"No, you are scared, June," she said softly. "I am scared too, but we have to do this." The other passengers on the shuttle kept staring at them. Most were alien species that Hannah had only seen in pictures before. There were tall blue beings with 4 arms, small furry creatures that looked like walking cats, and crystalline beings that seemed to be made of living glass. They all whispered among themselves and pointed at Hannah and her companion. "That thing dangerous?" asked one of the blue aliens in Galactic Standard language. "It looks like a monster," said another passenger. Hannah felt her face grow hot with anger, but she kept quiet. She had learned that arguing never helped. People would believe what they wanted to believe. The shuttle finished docking, and all the passengers began to leave. Hannah stood up and gathered her small bag of belongings. The creature beside her also stood, moving slowly and carefully so it would not bump into anyone. Even being careful, it was so large that other passengers had to squeeze past it in the narrow shuttle aisle. "Come on," June, Hannah said. "Let us go see our new home." They walked through the docking tunnel and into the main station. Nexus Prime was even more amazing from the inside. The ceiling was so high that Hannah could not see the top.
out.
Thousands of beings from hundreds of different worlds walked around, talked, and conducted business. The air smelled like a mixture of spices, metal, and something she could not identify. Signs in dozens of languages pointed toward different sections of the station. Hannah looked for the ones that said Galactic Academy. She had studied Galactic Standard for 2 years, but seeing it everywhere still felt strange. "This way," she said, leading her companion toward a large corridor marked with the Academy symbol. Our wagers they walked. More beings stopped to stare at them. Some looked curious, others looked afraid, and a few looked disgusted. Hannah heard whispers in languages she could not understand, but the tone was always the same. They were talking about the monster walking with the human girl. The corridor led to a large open area filled with young beings from many different species. These must be other students, Hannah realized. They all looked to be around her age, though it was hard to tell with aliens. They wore uniforms in the Academy colors of deep blue and silver. A tall, elegant being approached them. It had pale purple skin and long white hair that seemed to float around its head. Its eyes were completely black with no visible pupils. "You must be the human student," it said in perfect Galactic Standard. Its voice was smooth and cold. "I am. Administrator Kell, we received your application and documentation." "Yes, I am Hannah Kim from Earth," she replied, trying to sound confident. "Thank you for accepting me into the Academy." Administrator Kell looked at the large creature beside her. Its black eyes showed no emotion at all. "And this is your companion animal?" it asked. "This is my brother June," Hannah said firmly. Several nearby students heard this and began to laugh. The sound was not pleasant. Some species laughed with high-pitched squeaks, others with deep roars, and some made clicking sounds. But they were all clearly making fun of her. "Your brother?" said one of the laughing students. It was a being that looked somewhat like a lizard. "Walking on 2 legs? That thing is your brother? How stupid do humans think we are?" said another student. This one covered in thick fur with large pointed ears. Administrator Kell held up one hand, and the laughter stopped immediately. "Miss Kim," it said in that same cold voice, "we understand that some primitive species form strong emotional attachments to their pets. However, you cannot seriously expect us to believe that this creature is actually your sibling. He is my brother, Hannah repeated, her voice getting stronger. His name is Jun Kim, and he is 24 years old. The creature beside her looked at Administrator Kell with those glowing amber eyes. It did not speak or make any gesture that looked intelligent. It just stood there, breathing slowly, looking like exactly what everyone thought it was. A large, dangerous animal. The creature shows no signs of higher intelligence. Administrator Kell continued. It cannot speak, it cannot use tools, and it displays no cognitive abilities above those of a trained beast. Your documentation lists it as a companion animal that has been conditioned to be non-aggressive. That is how we will classify it. But he is my brother, Hannah said again, though her voice was getting quieter. Miss Kim, Administrator Kell said. And now there was a hint of impatience in its voice. You are here to study at the finest educational institution in the galaxy. You will be learning alongside the brightest young minds from hundreds of civilized worlds. Please do not insult our intelligence with primitive human superstitions about animals. The other students began to whisper among themselves again. Hannah caught fragments of their conversations. Humans are so backward, they probably think their pets are people too. Look at the size of that thing. Are we safe with it here? I heard humans are barely more evolved than their own animals. One student stepped forward from the crowd. He was tall and had golden skin that seemed to shine with its own light. His hair was silver and his eyes were bright green. He wore the academy uniform, but something about the way he carried himself suggested he was important. I am Prince Thane of the Velkarian Empire, he announced in a voice that carried across the entire area. My family has been part of the Galactic Confederation for over 10,000 years. We have seen many primitive species join our ranks, but this is truly remarkable. He walked closer to Hannah and the creature, moving with the confidence of someone who had never been told no. Human who thinks a beast is her brother, he said, shaking his head. How wonderfully innocent. Tell me, little human, does your pet do tricks? Can it roll over and play dead? The creature looked at Prince Thane with those amber eyes, but showed no reaction to his mocking tone. He is not a pet, Hannah said, but her voice was barely above a whisper now. Of course not, Prince Thane said with a smile that was not kind. Is your brother? How could I forget? More laughter erupted from the crowd of students. Administrator Kell watched everything with those emotionless black eyes. Miss Kim, it finally said, your companion animal will be housed in the creature containment facility. It will be fed and cared for according to standard protocols. You may visit it during designated hours. He stays with me, Hannah said, finding her voice again. The documentation clearly states that he is non-dangerous and has been approved as a companion. Administrator Kell was quiet for a long moment, then it nodded slowly. Very well. Your companion animal may remain in your dormitory section, provided it causes no problems. Any aggressive behavior will result in its immediate removal to containment. Thank you, Hannah said. Do not thank me yet, Administrator Kell replied. The academy is not a place for pets or imaginary siblings. You are here to learn, Miss Kim. I suggest you focus on that and leave your primitive beliefs behind. The administrator turned and walked away, its floating hair trailing behind it. The crowd of students slowly began to break up, but many continued to stare at Hannah and her companion. She heard their whispers and saw their expressions of amusement and disgust. Prince Thane was the last to leave. He looked at the creature one more time and shook his head. Such a waste, he said to Hannah. It could have been interesting for a human. Instead, you choose to live in a fantasy. He walked away, leaving Hannah standing alone in the large open area with her silent companion.
Yes.
The creature looked down at her with those sad amber eyes and made a soft rumbling sound. Hannah reached up and touched its scaled face. I know, June, she whispered. I know this is hard. But we are going to show them. Somehow, we are going to show them all. The creature's eyes seemed to brighten slightly at her words. For just a moment, something flickered behind those amber pupils, something that looked almost like hope. 3 weeks had passed since Hannah arrived at the Galactic Academy, and nothing had gotten easier. Every morning she woke up in her small dormitory room to find June sleeping on the floor beside her bed. The academy had given her a room designed for single occupancy, but they allowed her companion to stay as long as he remained quiet. June was always quiet, never made loud noises, never damaged anything, and never showed aggression toward anyone. He simply existed, following Hannah wherever she went, like a massive shadow. The other students had stopped openly laughing at them, but the whispers never stopped. As Hannah walked through the corridors to her first class of the day, she heard the familiar sounds of alien voices discussing her and June. There goes the human with her pet monster. I heard she talks to it like it understands her. My cousin says humans are known for forming weird bonds with animals. At least it is house-trained. Hannah kept her eyes forward and pretended not to hear. June walked beside her, his heavy footsteps making soft thuds on the station floor. His amber eyes looked straight ahead, but she noticed how his massive head would sometimes turn slightly when students made particularly cruel comments. They reached the advanced physics classroom, and Hannah took her usual seat in the back corner. June settled on the floor beside her desk, curling up as small as his huge body would allow. The other students filed in, most of them giving the pair a wide berth. Professor Zeth entered the room. He was a crystalline being, his body made of what looked like living blue glass. When he spoke, his voice sounded like wind chimes. Today we will discuss faster-than-light communication systems, he announced. Miss Kim, perhaps you can tell us about Earth's primitive attempts at such technology. Several students snickered. Hannah felt her face grow hot, but she stood up to answer. Earth has developed a basic quantum entanglement communication array, she said. The range is limited, and the data transfer rate is slow compared to galactic standards, but it works. Barely, said Prince Thane from his seat near the front. I have heard that human technology is still several centuries behind civilized standards. That is correct, Professor Zeth agreed. Human technology is indeed primitive.
Their first
attempt at FTL communication took them 12 years to develop, while most species achieve it within 3 years of discovering quantum mechanics. Hannah sat back down, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. She noticed that June had raised his head and was looking directly at Professor Zeth. For a moment, those amber eyes seemed to flash with something that looked almost like anger. The class continued with Professor Zeth explaining advanced concepts that made Hannah's head spin. She took notes as fast as she could, but many of the ideas were far beyond anything she had learned on Earth. The other students seemed to understand everything perfectly, asking sophisticated questions and making intelligent observations. When the class ended, Hannah gathered her things slowly, waiting for the other students to leave first. She had learned that it was easier to avoid the crowds and their stares. Struggling with the material, asked a voice behind her. Hannah turned to see a tall, slender being with pale gray skin and large black eyes. This was Vera, one of the few students who had never openly mocked Hannah or June. A little, Hannah admitted. Concepts are much more advanced than what we study on Earth. That is understandable, Vera said. Her voice was soft and musical. My species, the Nexari, had similar difficulties when we first joined the Confederation. We were behind in several areas of technology. How long did it take your people to catch up? Hannah asked. About 50 years, Vera replied. But we had the advantage of guidance from other species. Humans are trying to develop everything independently, which makes it much harder. June had stood up and was now looking at Vera with interest. The alien student noticed his attention. Your companion is very well behaved, she said. Many species keep similar creatures for protection or companionship. He is not a pet, Hannah said quietly. Vera tilted her head, a gesture that looked curious rather than mocking. You truly believe this creature is your brother? I do not just believe it, Hannah said. I know it. That must be very painful for you, Vera said softly. To lose someone you love and then convince yourself they are still there? Then Hannah felt tears starting to form in her eyes, but she blinked them back. Even the kindest students thought she was living in a delusion. I should go, she said. I have combat training next. Be careful in that class, Vera warned. Prince Thane likes to show off, and some of the other students can be rough with newcomers. Hannah nodded and headed toward the training facility with June following behind her. The combat training room was huge, with equipment and obstacles scattered throughout. Students were supposed to learn how to handle dangerous situations they might face during diplomatic missions or exploration assignments. The instructor was a massive being covered in thick armor plating. His name was Commander Rask, and he had a reputation for being tough but fair. "Today we practice escape scenarios," he announced, in a voice like grinding stone. "You will work in pairs. The simulation will place you in a dangerous situation, and you must find a way to survive and escape." The students quickly formed pairs. Hannah found herself standing alone, as usual. None of the other students wanted to work with the human girl and her monster companion. "Miss Kim will work with Prince Thane," Commander Rosk decided. "Your creature will wait outside the training area." "His name is June," Hannah said firmly. "And he is not a creature." Commander Rosk looked at her with 4 yellow eyes. "Animal." "We'll wait outside," he repeated. June looked at Hannah and made a soft rumbling sound. She touched his arm gently. "It is okay," she told him. "I will be fine. Just wait for me." The large being moved slowly toward the exit, his amber eyes watching Hannah until she was out of sight. The training simulation began. Hannah and Prince Thane were placed in a virtual environment that looked like a damaged spacecraft. Alarms were blaring, and emergency lights flashed red. Their mission was to reach the escape pods before the ship exploded. Prince Thane immediately took charge, pushing past Hannah to examine the corridor ahead. "Stay behind me, human," he commanded. "Try not to slow me down too much." The simulation threw obstacles at them. Blocked passages forced them to crawl through maintenance shafts. Damaged gravity generators made them float unpredictably through some sections. Emergency doors slammed shut, requiring them to find alternate routes. Hannah struggled with many of the challenges. Her human strength and reflexes were not as good as Prince Thane's enhanced Valkyrian abilities, but she noticed things he missed. When he was ready to blast through a locked door, she spotted a manual override switch. When he wanted to go left at a junction, she pointed out scorch marks that suggested danger in that direction. "How did you see that?" Prince Thane asked after. "She helped them avoid a simulated plasma fire." "I just looked carefully," Hannah replied. He said. And for the first time, his voice did not sound completely dismissive. They reached the escape pods just before the simulation ended. Commander Rask nodded approvingly. "Good work, both of you," he said. "Prince Thane, your physical abilities are excellent as always. Miss Kim, your observation skills are better than expected for a human." After the training session, Hannah walked back to her dormitory with June. She was exhausted, both physically and emotionally. The constant feeling of being watched and judged was wearing her down. "I miss home," she said to June, as they walked through the quieter residential corridors. "I miss Mom and Dad. I miss feeling like I belong somewhere." June made a soft sound and gently nudged her shoulder with his massive hand. "I know you miss home too," she continued. "I know this is hard for you. Being trapped like that, not being able to tell people who you really are." They reached her room, and Hannah collapsed onto her bed. June settled onto the floor beside her, as he did every night. "Do you remember when we were kids?" she asked, staring at the ceiling. "You used to help me with my math homework. You were always so patient, even when I could not understand the simplest problems." June's eyes seemed to glow a little brighter in the dim light. "And when I was scared during thunderstorms, you would sit by my bed and tell me stories about brave explorers who traveled to distant stars," Hannah continued. "You said that someday we would travel to the stars together." She rolled over onto her side to look at him. "Well, we made it to the stars, June. It is not exactly what we dreamed about, but we are here." June lifted one massive hand and very gently touched her face. The gesture was so careful, so tender, that it could not possibly be the action of a mindless beast. "I know you are still in there," Hannah whispered. "I know you can understand me. And someday, I am going to prove it to everyone." As she drifted off to sleep, Hannah thought she heard June make a sound that was almost like words. But when she opened her eyes to look, he was just lying quietly on the floor, those amber eyes watching over her like they did every night, outside her window. The The stars of the galaxy sparkled in the darkness, and somewhere among them was a small, blue planet called Earth, where two children had once dreamed of adventures among the stars. 2 months had passed since Hannah arrived at the academy. She had settled into a routine of classes, study sessions. In quiet evenings with June, the other students had mostly stopped their open mockery. But the whispers and stares continued. Some days were harder than others. Today was one of the hard days. Hannah sat in her advanced xenobiology class, trying to focus on Professor Malick's lecture about evolutionary adaptation. The professor was a tall, insect-like being with 6 arms and compound eyes that seemed to see everything at once. Biological weapons have been used throughout galactic history, Professor Malick was saying, his voice making a clicking sound between words. The most devastating attacks target the genetic structure of entire species. Hannah felt her stomach tighten. She knew where this discussion was heading. Can anyone give me an example of a successful biological weapon? Professor asked. Prince. Thane raised his hand immediately. The hegemony's devolution weapon used against the human colonies 3 years ago. Excellent example, Professor Malick said. The weapon was designed to reverse millions of years of evolution in minutes. It attacked the nervous system and brain structure, reducing sentient beings to primitive animal states. Several students turned to look at Hannah. She kept her eyes on her notes, but her hands were shaking slightly. The weapon was remarkably effective, Professor Malick continued. Every human exposed to it was transformed into a mindless beast. Their higher brain functions were completely destroyed, leaving only basic survival instincts. What happened to the victims? Asked Vera, the Nexori student who had shown Hannah some kindness. They were beyond help, Professor Malick said matter-of-factly. The transformation was permanent. Most were either destroyed or placed in containment facilities. Few were kept as study subjects, but they showed no signs of intelligence or consciousness. Hannah could not take it anymore. She stood up suddenly, her chair scraping against the floor. That is not true, she said, her voice cutting through the classroom. Every student turned to stare at her. Professor Malick's compound eyes focused on her with sharp attention. Miss Kim, he said slowly, do you wish to add something to our discussion? Hannah's heart was pounding, but she had kept this secret for too long. The weapon did not destroy consciousness, she said. It trapped it. I beg your pardon? Professor Malick said. My brother was caught in the weapons blast radius, Hannah continued, her voice getting stronger. He was working on Earth's first faster-than-light communication array when the hegemony attacked the outer colonies. The biological weapon hit the research station where he was working. The classroom was completely silent now. Even Prince Thane was listening intently. The weapon changed his body, Hannah said, made him bigger, stronger, covered him in scales. It took away his ability to speak and use tools. But it did not take away his mind. Miss Kim, Professor Malick said gently, I understand this is difficult for you, but the medical evidence is clear. The weapon destroys higher brain functions completely. No, Hannah said firmly. It hides them. My brother is still in there. He understands everything. He remembers everything. He just cannot show it in ways that others recognize. Several students began to whisper among themselves. Hannah heard fragments of their conversations, but she really believes it. Poor human, she cannot accept reality. This is sad to watch. Prince Thane stood up and looked directly at Hannah. You are saying that the beast you keep as a companion is actually your brother? He is not a beast, Hannah said, her voice rising. His name is June Kim. He is 24 years old. He graduated from Earth Technical University with highest honors. He loves classical music and terrible jokes. He used to build model spaceships when he was little. Miss Kim, Professor Malick said, his voice full of what sounded like pity, grief, can make us see things that are not there. The creature you care for may remind you of your brother, but it is not him. Before the attack, June was working on a communication array that would have revolutionized human space travel, Hannah continued, ignoring the professor's words. He discovered a way to boost quantum entanglement signals using crystalline amplifiers. He was going to change everything. And now he follows you around like a pet, Prince Thane said with a cruel smile. How convenient that your genius brother became your loyal companion. He is not a pet, Hannah said, her voice breaking slightly. He is my brother. He takes care of me. He watches over me. He understands every word I say. Then why does he not speak? Asked another student. Because he cannot, Hannah said. The weapon changed his vocal cords, his jaw structure, everything. But he finds other ways to communicate. He uses gestures, expressions, body language. You just have to know how to read them. It's convenient that only you can understand these gestures, Prince Thane said. Others could understand if they tried, Hannah said. But no one wants to try. Everyone just sees a monster. Professor Malik held up one of his 6 hands for silence. Miss Kim, I appreciate your emotional attachment to your companion, but science does not support your claims. The hegemony's biological weapon was thoroughly studied. It causes complete neural degeneration. Then your science is wrong, Hannah said. The classroom erupted in shocked murmurs. No student had ever challenged a professor so directly. My science is wrong? Professor Malik repeated, his compound eyes glittering. Yes, Hannah said. Your science assumes that consciousness must express itself in familiar ways. But what if the weapon did not destroy consciousness? What if it just changed how consciousness could be expressed? That is impossible, Professor Malik said. Why, Hannah asked. Because your textbooks say so? Because your experts decided it was impossible? Did any of your experts actually spend time with the victims? Did they try to communicate with them? Miss Kim, you are being emotional and irrational, Professor Malik said. No, Hannah said. I am being logical. I know my brother. I have spent every day with him for 3 years. I have seen him solve problems, make decisions, show emotions. He is not an animal. He is a person trapped in a changed body. If that were true, said Vera, quietly, it would be one of the most important discoveries in galactic history. It is true, Hannah said, and someday I will prove it. How? Prince Thane asked with a mocking laugh. Will you teach your pet to speak? Will you have him solve mathematical equations? He already solves problems, Hannah said. Every day. Navigates the station, he avoids conflicts, he makes decisions about when to eat and when to rest. Animals do not do these things with the level of complexity he shows. All trained animals can do those things, Professor Malik said. Not the way he does them, Hannah insisted. He shows planning, anticipation, emotional responses to specific situations. When I am sad, he comforts me. When I am happy, he seems happy too. When other students are cruel, he gets angry, but he controls that anger because he knows violence would only make things worse for me. You are projecting human emotions onto an animal, Professor Malik said. No, Hannah said. I am recognizing human emotions in my brother. The professor looked at her for a long moment. His compound eyes made it impossible to read his expression. Miss Kim, he said finally, your dedication to your companion is admirable. However, this is a science class, not a place for emotional fantasies. Please take your seat. Hannah sat down slowly, her face burning with embarrassment and anger. The other students continued to whisper and stare. She had revealed her deepest belief, her most important truth. And they all thought she was crazy. After class, she walked quickly toward the dormitory, wanting to get away from the stares and whispers. But Prince Thane caught up with her in the corridor. That was quite a performance, he said, walking beside her. You almost sounded like you really believed it. I do believe it, Hannah said, without looking at him. Then you are either lying or delusional, Prince Thane said. Not that reflects well on humanity. Why do you care so much? Hannah asked, finally stopping to face him. Why does it matter to you what I believe about my brother? Prince Thane was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was less mocking than usual. Because I lost someone too, he said. My sister died in a transport accident 2 years ago. Months I saw her everywhere. I heard her voice, felt her presence. I understand the desire to believe that someone you love is still with you. This is different, Hannah said. Oh. Prince Thane said gently. It is not. Grief makes us see what we want to see. Your brother is gone, Hannah. The creature you care for is just a shadow of what he used to be. You are wrong, Hannah said. Am I? Prince Thane asked. Then prove it. Show us all that your monster is really your brother. I will, Hannah said. Someday I will. Prince Thane shook his head sadly. I hope you find peace, Hannah, but holding on to impossible dreams will only cause you more pain. He walked away, leaving Hannah standing alone in the corridor. She made her way back to her room where June was waiting for her. The moment she saw him, she broke down crying. They all think I am crazy, she sobbed, collapsing onto her bed. They think I am making it all up because I cannot accept that. You are gone. June moved closer and very gently placed his massive hand on her shoulder. The gesture was so careful, so full of concern, that it could not possibly be the action of a mindless beast. I know you are still in there, Hannah whispered. I know you heard everything I said in class. I know you understand how hard this is. June made a soft rumbling sound and looked directly into her eyes. For a moment she saw something in those amber depths that looked like gratitude, love, and determination all mixed together. We will show them, she said, wiping away her tears. Somehow we will show them all that you are still my brother. Outside her window, the stars continued their eternal dance, and somewhere among them was the truth that would change everything. The Academy's annual Trials of Valor had arrived. For 1 week, students would face challenges designed to test everything they had learned. Combat skills, problem-solving, leadership, and courage would all be measured. The trials determined class rankings and future assignment opportunities. Hannah stood in the preparation area with the other students. Checking her equipment one final time, she wore the standard trial uniform, a lightweight bodysuit. With basic armor plating and a utility belt containing emergency supplies, her weapon was a standard energy pistol set to training mode. June stood nearby, watching everything with those alert amber eyes. The Academy rules stated that companion animals had to wait in designated areas during the trials. But Hannah had convinced Administrator Kell to let him stay close by, arguing that separation would cause her emotional distress. Nervous? Human? Prince Thane asked, as he adjusted his own equipment. His gear was more advanced than the standard issue, clearly custom-made for Valkyrian physiology. A little, Hannah admitted. These trials are much more advanced than anything we train for on Earth. They are designed to push us to our limits, said Vera, joining their conversation. My older sister went through them 5 years ago. She said the key is to stay calm and think clearly. Commander Rask entered the preparation area, his massive armored form commanding immediate attention from all the students. Today you face the individual combat trial, he announced. Each of you will enter a different holographic scenario. You must survive for 30 minutes while accomplishing a specific mission objective. The scenarios adapt to your performance, becoming more difficult as you succeed. He looked directly at Hannah. Miss Kim, you will face a rescue scenario. Your mission is to extract a wounded diplomat from a damaged space station before it suffers catastrophic failure. What about Prince Thane? Asked another student. Prince Thane will face a combat scenario aboard a hostile ship, Commander Rask replied. His mission is to disable the ship's weapons systems while avoiding or eliminating enemy forces. The students began moving toward the individual trial chambers. Each chamber contained advanced holographic projectors that could create completely realistic environments. The technology was so sophisticated that participants could feel heat, cold, and even simulated pain. Hannah paused next to June before entering. Her assigned chamber? I will be okay, she told him quietly. It is just a simulation. Wait here for me. June looked at her with concern in his amber eyes. He made a soft rumbling sound and gently touched her arm. I know, she said. I will be careful. The chamber door sealed behind her, and suddenly Hannah was standing in a corridor aboard a damaged space station. Emergency lights flashed red, and she could hear the groaning of stressed metal. Artificial gravity flickered on and off, making her stomach lurch. A holographic display appeared in front of her, showing her mission parameters. Ambassador Kane, a higher-ranking Nexari diplomat, was trapped in the station's central hub. The station had suffered massive damage from an asteroid impact and would explode in 30 minutes. Her job was to reach the ambassador and get him too. The escape pods, Hannah checked her equipment and began moving through the damaged corridors. The path to the central hub was blocked by debris and damaged bulkheads. She had to crawl through maintenance shafts, climb over fallen beams, and find alternate routes when passages were completely blocked. 15 minutes into the simulation, she reached the central hub. Ambassador Kane was trapped under a fallen support beam, his leg clearly broken. The holographic diplomat looked exactly like a real Nexori, complete with gray skin and large black eyes filled with pain. "Help me," he pleaded in perfect galactic standard. "I cannot move my leg." Hannah examined the beam that had him pinned. It was too heavy for her to lift alone, and using her energy pistol to cut through it might bring down more debris she needed. To find another way, looking around the hub, she spotted a maintenance crane designed for moving heavy equipment. If she could power it up and position it correctly, she might be able to lift the beam. But as she moved toward the crane controls, the simulation began to malfunction. Warning lights that should have been holographic began burning with real heat. The artificial gravity did not just flicker, it failed completely, sending Hannah floating toward the ceiling. Most alarming of all, her energy pistol's safety settings had somehow been deactivated. The weapon was now set to full power. "Warning," announced an automated voice. "Safety protocols offline." Simulation running at full intensity. Hannah realized with growing horror that this was no longer a training exercise. The holographic environment had become genuinely dangerous. The heat was real, the gravity failure was real, and if anything in the scenario decided to attack her, the damage would be real too. She tried to contact the control room through her communicator, but got only static. Either the malfunction had disrupted communications, or the control room did not realize what was happening. The simulated Ambassador Kane was still calling for help. But now, there were new sounds echoing through the station. Footsteps, multiple. Sets of footsteps moving toward the central hub. Hannah grabbed onto a support rail to steady herself in the zero gravity and looked around desperately. Through the hub's viewport, she could see armed figures moving through the corridors. The simulation had apparently decided to add hostile forces to increase the difficulty, but these were not holographic enemies. The weapons they carried glowed with real energy signatures. If they reached the hub, they would find her completely vulnerable. The broken artificial gravity suddenly kicked back in with violent force. Hannah slammed into the floor hard enough to knock the wind out of her lungs. Ambassador Kane cried out. As the gravity shift put more pressure on his trapped leg, "Please," he begged, "you must help me. They are coming." But I could hear the footsteps getting closer. She had perhaps 2 minutes before the armed figures reached the hub. The crane was still her best option for freeing the ambassador. Operating it would take time she did not have. That was when she heard a sound that should not have been possible. A roar of rage that shook the entire simulation chamber. Through the hub's viewport, Hannah saw something that made her heart stop. June was somehow inside the simulation, his massive form moving through the corridors with deadly purpose. But that was impossible. The simulation chambers were sealed environments. Nothing could get in or out once a trial began. Yet there he was, and he was not moving like the simple creature everyone believed him to be. His movements were tactical, purposeful, and an understanding of the environment that no animal could possess. The armed figures that had been moving toward Hannah suddenly found themselves facing 3 meters of furious, scaled muscle. But instead of attacking them with brute force, June did something that would change everything. He began to systematically disable the hostile forces. Using techniques that could only come from an engineering background, June grabbed exposed power cables and rerouted them to create electrical barriers. He identified structural weak points and brought down sections of corridor to block enemy advance. Most incredibly, he began manipulating the station's internal systems, restoring artificial gravity in areas where it helped him and disabling it where it hindered his enemies. These were not the actions of an animal. These were the calculated moves of someone who understood exactly how space stations were built and how their systems worked. Someone like an engineer named June Kim. Hannah watched in amazement as her brother fought his way toward the central hub, not with animal fury, but with the precise problem-solving skills of a brilliant technical mind trapped in an altered body. The simulation was no longer just a test of her abilities. It had become the moment when June's true nature would finally be revealed to everyone watching from the control room, and in the distance, she could hear alarms blaring as the Academy's staff realized that something impossible was happening in Simulation Chamber 7. In the control room overlooking the simulation chambers, chaos erupted as technicians stared at their monitors in disbelief. "How did that creature get inside Chamber 7?" demanded Administrator Kell, its floating white hair whipping around, its head in agitation. "The chamber was sealed," stammered a technician. "Nothing should be able to enter once a trial begins." "Then explain what we are seeing," Kell snapped. "On the main screen." They watched as June moved through the simulated space station with impossible skill. He was not just fighting the hostile forces, he was outsmarting them. Commander Rosk pushed forward to get a better view. "Look at his movements," he said in his grinding voice. "That is not animal behavior. He is using the station's own systems against the enemies." "Impossible," said Professor Malik, who had come to observe the trials. "The creature shows no signs of higher intelligence." "And how do you explain this?" Commander Rosk pointed at the screen. They watched as June reached a junction where 3 corridors met. Instead of choosing a path at random, he stopped and examined something on the wall. It was a maintenance panel showing the station's power grid. After studying the display for several seconds, he opened the panel and began rerouting power connections. Within moments, the lights in 2 of the corridors went out, forcing the hostile forces to use the 3rd corridor where June was waiting for them. "That requires understanding of electrical systems," Commander Rosk observed, "and the ability to read technical diagrams." "The creature cannot read," Professor Malik insisted. "We have tested it, have we?" asked Vera, who had been quietly watching. "From the back of the control room, or have we just never given him anything he wanted to read?" Back in the simulation, Hannah was still trying to free Ambassador Kane when June finally reached the central hub. The moment he saw her, his amber eyes filled with what could only be described as relief. But there was no time for reunion. Hostile forces were regrouping, and the station's countdown timer showed only 8 minutes until total destruction. June looked at the trapped ambassador, then at Hannah, then at the maintenance crane she had been trying to operate. He moved to the crane controls and began working them with surprising dexterity for someone with such large hands. "June," Hannah said breathlessly, "you should not be here." "How did you even get inside?" June glanced at her and made a complex series of gestures with his free hand while operating the crane with the other. To the observers in the control room, it looked like random movement, but Hannah understood every gesture. "He says the simulation chamber's security lock uses the same frequency as the old maintenance doors on Earth's research stations," she translated. "He was able to override it using harmonic resonance from the corridor's communication system." Control room fell silent. "She is making that up," Prince Thane said, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. "Test it," suggested Vera. "Check the security logs." Technician's fingers flew over his console. His face went pale. "The security lock on Chamber 7 was indeed overridden," he reported. "The method used was frequency manipulation of the communication system, exactly as the human described." "Coincidence," Professor Malik said weakly. On screen, June had successfully positioned the crane and was now lifting the beam that trapped Ambassador Kane. But he did not just lift it randomly. He calculated the exact angle and position needed to remove the beam without causing a structural collapse. "Look at the precision," Commander Rosk said admiringly. "He knows exactly how much stress those support beams can handle." With Ambassador Kane freed, the next challenge was getting to the escape pods. The most direct route was blocked by both hostile forces and structural damage. June studied the situation for a moment, then began a new series of gestures to Hannah. "Says we need to go through the hydroponics bay," Hannah translated. "The artificial gravity there can be reversed to give us access to the upper levels. The environmental controls can be used to create a distraction for the hostile forces." How could he possibly know the layout of a space station he has never seen before? Administrator Kell demanded. "'Cause all Federation-class stations use the same basic design," Hannah replied, still translating June's gestures. He helped design the standardized blueprints as part of Earth's integration project. This statement hit the control room like a physical blow. Check the records. Commander Rask ordered quietly. Another technician began searching through galactic databases. June Kim, Earth engineer, age 24, he read, participated in the Federation Station Standardization Project. Specialized in power distribution and environmental systems. Bring up his personnel file, Kel commanded June Kim's official. Photograph appeared on a side monitor. Showed a young human male with dark hair and intelligent eyes. The resemblance to the creature in the simulation was impossible to see, but the timeline matched perfectly. According to this, he was present at Research Station Alpha 7 when the hegemony deployed their biological weapon. The technician continued reading. Listed as missing, presumed dead. In the simulation, June was leading Hannah and Ambassador Kane through the hydroponics bay exactly as he had planned. He reversed the artificial gravity in precise sections, creating a path through what should have been impossible terrain. Then he triggered the environmental systems to release a cloud of harmless but dense vapor that confused the hostile forces and covered their escape. Every action demonstrated not just intelligence, but specific technical knowledge that matched perfectly with June Kim's engineering background. This is unprecedented, Administrator Kell said quietly. They reached the escape pods with 2 minutes to spare. But even here, June's expertise showed. Instead of using the first available pod, he examined several of them and selected one that would have the best chance of surviving the station's explosion. As he helped Ambassador Kane into the pod, Simulated Diplomat looked up at him with gratitude. Thank you, Ambassador Kane said. You saved my life. June paused and looked directly at the holographic figure. Then, for the first time since his transformation, he spoke. The sound was distorted by his changed vocal cords, barely recognizable as speech. But the words were clear enough for everyone to understand. You are welcome. The control room erupted in shocked voices. On screen, Hannah was crying as she hugged her brother, and even the holographic Ambassador Kane looked amazed. Did that creature just speak? Professor Malik asked in a stunned whisper. Creature, Commander Rask corrected firmly. Student. That is Student June Kim. The escape pod launched just as the simulation reached its climax. The space station exploded in a spectacular display of light and energy, but the pod carried its 3 passengers to safety. As the simulation ended and the chamber's doors opened, Hannah and June emerged to find a crowd of Academy staff waiting for them. The hostility and dismissal that had greeted them months ago was gone, placed by wonder and respect. Administrator Kell approached them slowly, its black eyes fixed on June. Mr. Kim, it said formally, I believe we owe you an apology. June looked at the administrator and nodded once. The gesture was unmistakably human in its dignity and grace. We also owe you proper recognition, Kell continued, and proper medical attention. If consciousness can survive the hegemony's weapon, then perhaps we can find ways to reverse its effects. For the first time in 3 years, June Kim smiled. The expression was different on his altered features, but the joy in his amber eyes was unmistakable. Hannah had been right all along. Her brother had never truly left her. He had simply been waiting for the chance to prove that love and family bonds are stronger than any weapon designed to destroy them. 3 days after the simulation incident, Hannah sat in the Academy's main conference room, surrounded by the most important beings in the Galactic Confederation. Scientists, medical experts, military leaders, and diplomats had all come to Nexus, primed to witness something that had been declared impossible. June sat beside her, no longer forced to wait outside like a pet. He wore a specially designed Academy uniform that fit his altered physiology, and his amber eyes were bright with intelligence that no one could deny. The implications of this discovery are staggering, said Chief Medical Officer Tharn, a tall being with silver skin and 3 arms. If consciousness can survive the hegemony's biological weapon, it changes everything we know about neurobiology. More importantly, added General Voss, a heavily armored military commander, it means the weapon is not as effective as we believed. Thousands of beings we thought were lost might still be saved. Administrator Kell stood at the head of the conference table, its floating hair moving slowly in the recycled air. The Academy's investigation has confirmed the identity of this individual, Kell announced formally. Genetic analysis, psychological evaluation, and demonstration of retained knowledge all prove that this is indeed June Kim, the Earth engineer who was reported missing 3 years ago. A murmur of amazement rippled through the gathered officials. Mr. Kim has agreed to participate in medical research that may help other victims of the biological weapon, Kell continued. In return, the Confederation will provide him with the best medical care available and full recognition of his academic credentials. Dr. Shen, an elderly Nexari medical researcher, leaned forward in her chair. Mr. Kim, she said gently, can you help us understand how you maintained your consciousness during the transformation? June looked at Hannah, then began a series of complex gestures. His sister translated smoothly. He says the key was connection, Hannah said. The weapon attacked the parts of the brain that handle individual consciousness, but it could not destroy the neural pathways associated with emotional bonds. His connection to family, especially to me, created an anchor that kept his core identity intact. Fascinating, Dr. Shen said. And you, Miss Kim? How did you recognize that your brother was still present? I never stopped talking to him, Hannah replied. Even when everyone said I was crazy, I kept treating him like the person he was. I told him about my day, asked his opinion on things, shared my feelings. Over time, I learned to read his responses. But how did you know his responses were genuine? Asked Professor Malik, who had been notably quiet since the revelation. June gestured again, and Hannah smiled as she translated. He says you can test him if you want. Ask him any question about engineering, mathematics, or his life before the transformation. He remembers everything. General Voss leaned forward with interest. Very well, Mr. Kim. Can you tell us the primary weakness in the Federation's current shield technology? June's gestures became more complex and technical. Hannah had to pause several times to make sure she was translating correctly. He says the problem is harmonic resonance in the tertiary field generators, she said. The frequency modulators are calibrated for single-source impacts, but they become unstable when facing multiple coordinated attacks. He suggests implementing a rotating frequency pattern that would prevent attackers from finding a harmonic match. The military officers at the table exchanged surprised looks. That analysis is absolutely correct, General Voss admitted. Best engineers have been working on that exact problem for 2 years. There is more, Hannah continued, translating June's ongoing gestures. He says he can design a solution, but he would need access to proper engineering tools and someone to help him communicate his ideas more clearly. Chief Medical Officer Tharn spoke up. Our research team believes we can develop a neural interface that would allow Mr. Kim to communicate directly with computers. It would not restore his original voice, but it would give him a way to express complex ideas without relying on translation. June's eyes brightened with excitement. He gestured rapidly to Hannah. He wants to know how soon this interface could be ready, she said. We could have a prototype within a month, Dr. Tharn replied, assuming you are willing to participate in the development process. June nodded enthusiastically. Administrator Kell looked around the conference room. There is another matter we must address. As Mr. Kim's presence here has already begun to change how we view consciousness and identity. Several other families have come forward, claiming that their relatives who were transformed by the weapon might also retain their awareness. We will need to develop new protocols for identification and communication, Dr. Shen said. This could affect hundreds, perhaps thousands of individuals. Prince Thane, who had been sitting quietly in the back of the room, finally spoke up. I owe both of you an apology, he said, looking directly at Hannah and June. I was wrong about everything. Your bond with your brother is remarkable, and your determination to prove his humanity has changed galactic medicine forever. Thank you, Hannah said simply. June gestured to her, and she translated with a smile. He says that understanding is more important than apologies. We all believed what the evidence seemed to show. The important thing is that we are willing to change our minds when we learn new truth, wisely said Administrator Kell agreed. This experience has taught us all valuable lessons about the danger of assumptions. The conference continued for several more hours, with plans being made for research, medical treatment, and the search for other survivors of the biological weapon. But the most important moment came at the end, when Kel made a formal announcement. Effective immediately, the administrator declared, June Kim is recognized as a full student of the Galactic Academy. His academic record will reflect his true identity, and he will be permitted to complete his studies with whatever accommodations are necessary. The room erupted in applause. Even beings who had never met June before seemed moved by the historic nature of the moment. That evening, Hannah and June sat in their dormitory room, which had been expanded to accommodate June's larger size and upcoming medical equipment. Through their window, they could see the stars of the galaxy sparkling in the darkness. "Do you remember when we were children?" Hannah asked, just as she had so many times before. "You used to tell me stories about traveling to the stars?" June gestured slowly, and Hannah translated his words aloud, even though they were alone. "He says the journey was harder than we imagined, but we made it together, and now we can help others make the same journey." She reached over and took his massive hand in hers. "I am proud of you, big brother," she said. "It's not just for surviving, but for helping everyone understand that family bonds are stronger than any weapon." June squeezed her hand gently and looked out at the stars. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new research, new opportunities to help other families reunite with loved ones they thought they had lost forever. But tonight, two siblings from a small blue planet called Earth sat together in the vast darkness of space, proving that love and determination could overcome any obstacle the universe might place in their path. The hegemony's weapon had been designed to destroy consciousness and break the bonds between sentient beings. Instead, it had become the catalyst for one of the greatest discoveries in galactic history: that the connections between those who love each other cannot be broken by any force in the universe. And in research laboratories across the galaxy, scientists began working on ways to free other trapped minds. Inspired by the unbreakable bond between Hannah and June Kim, the stars continued their eternal dance. And among them, humanity had found its place, not through superior technology or physical strength, but through the simple, powerful truth that family is forever.